Thank you for finding us again. Another edition of No Stoplights. We're gaining a little traction. We've done. We've got to a place where I always thought we'd be most comfortable, and that is highlighting our community. I do 4 hours of conservative talk radio every morning, 20 hours a week. As we say in the South, I get my belly full of national politics, and I always had this desire to use this podcast as kind of a conduit, a vessel, a vehicle to tell stories about our community, some political, some not so political. We've had, 2 or 3 consecutive podcasts of what I consider iconic businesses in our community and business leaders of our community. Many are sponsors of our show, and I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't thank our sponsors, and our sponsors are, you ready? McCall Farms, Francis Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky Finn's, Victor's, Margaret MPD Electric Cooperative, Pepsi of Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. So when I'm talking about influential corporate citizens and companies that have made major contributions to our area, I am extremely proud to be associated with the companies that I just mentioned. And once again, I want to thank you for, the more views and subscribers we're getting, the more traction we'll gain. We're going to make it work. We just don't know how long it'll take. Speaking of business, speaking of local enterprise, I am honored to have with us 2 distinguished guests. Henry and Marion Swink of McCall Farms are with us today in the spirit of business and local community. I want to share a story before I go to Marion and Henry. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I had a consultant named Robert Cahaley. Now, Robert's gone off and done big things with Trafalgar. He's one of the most renowned strategists / pollsters in Republican politics today, does a lot of work for the Trump campaign. But Robert didn't know me well. And Robert tried to convince me to go to Greenville or Lexington and record a television ad because that's where all the Republicans were. And I said, well, that ain't where my Republicans are. My Republicans are at home. And if I can't maintain a certain connection to my hometown, my home community, then I don't care to win. And I overruled Robert. He's much smarter and brighter than I am, but I did overrule him on that. And we did every television ad in our lieutenant governor's campaign at McCall Farms in Effingham, South Carolina, because Henry Swink and Marion Swink were very supportive, very kind and gracious, not just to my political campaign, but to allowing me to come into their facility and talk politics for a while. So Henry, Marion, how are you guys doing? And thank you for joining us. 2 distinguished gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and we'll kind of have at it for the next however long. McCall Farms is a extremely old and established business, and I don't mean old in a bad way, because if you ride down the road going to Lake City, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I want to ask Marion. I'll start with you if you don't mind. All right. At what point in time do you remember McCall Farms being a part of your life?
Well, that goes back as far as I can remember. Ken, we have grew up on the farm. We live on the farm. The farm is all around the house. The company, McCall Farms, is right there on the property. I remember when our dad tore down the trees down there and started building the plant. That was, in 54, I was, 8 years old. And then we were too young to work in the plant, so we grew up on the farm with tobacco as the main crop, and just did all aspects of the farming life until I got old enough to work in the plant. And then I moved over to the canning side, and Henry continued to run the farm.
Henry, at what point do you remember the farm being a part of your life?
Well, probably, Ken, getting up early in the morning, milking 2 cows by hand, rain or shine, sleet or snow, going to school, going to church. We thought nothing of working as just a young kid. Everybody did back then, and we would get up, milk 2 cows, then feed up, come to eat breakfast, and then catch the school bus and go to school.
So literally a farming family. I mean, that's what it was. Everybody on the family pulled their weight, right, chipped in, did what they needed to do. Okay, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but farming, I would imagine, in the traditional row crop sense, tobacco, cotton, corn, soybeans? I mean, is that kind of what you remember? Peanuts at a very early age. So what led to an initial decision to get in the canning business? Either one of you guys. I mean, I'm not going to call names. You guys, because I mean, we're informal here.
Well, what I would say was back, our dad decided that he wanted to diversify. So the first thing we did was got in the dairy business. And we had a dairy in the backyard, to Henry's point. And after a couple of years, he realized that was not where he wanted to go. So he got rid of all the cows except for 2.
Why did he realize that's not the way he wanted to go?
Really, the truth of it is, the cows got in a bunch of wild onions one time, and it made a mess of the milk, and they threw out all the milk, and Dad said that was the end of that. So he got out. He didn't like the dairy anyway. And but Henry will tell it a little different. Henry, why don't you tell why we got out of it?
What really got out of it, one of the leading reasons was that my dad had 5 children, and the only main sole means of income was tobacco, really. We grow these other crops, but the margins weren't in those kind of crops to sustain a family of 5. So, and he was a heavy smoker, like everybody else was back then, unfiltered cigarettes, smoked all the time, but he drilled into his 5 children, don't you ever use this product. And about that time, during some of that time, the warning came out on a pack of cigarettes that this could be harmful to your health.
You remember that, or you remember your dad talking about it?
My dad talking about it. I don't remember it.
I got you.
I guess maybe I remember some of the clippings in news, but we had one TV, and it half worked, as you can imagine, back during that time, so we didn't get it. I don't guess I was even on TV then, but he realized that he needed to do something different. And at that time, there were a lot of small canneries in South Carolina, in fact, all over the country, really. And this company did come up for sale. It was out of Ruby, South Carolina, in Chesterfield County. The brand name was Lord Chesterfield. It was named after Chesterfield County. It was for sale, and they didn't have a generation to pass it on to. So my dad got interested in that and got into that. And he treated it really as a stepchild because there were still margins in tobacco. Margins in tobacco really didn't go away till they started ticking it at the mid-'70s, but by the mid-'80s, there was no question where tobacco was going. So that's what got us into it.
So your dad was not just a farmer, he was an entrepreneur. Not that farmers aren't entrepreneurs, but he had kind of an entrepreneurial mind, an entrepreneurial spirit about him, always looking for a different way to make margins, to use your word, Henry?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He was
what do you remember about your dad?
Really and truly, he was a numbers man, always has been a numbers man. He
was a good leader. I've compared him to a general. It wasn't that he got in and drove the tractor, but he could get the job done. He didn't get in and work in the canning plant as much as he was able to communicate very well on what needed to be done and had the personality to get people to get the job done.
Kind of a ringleader, so to speak.
I would say that's good. That is a good way to put him.
And you go off to Clemson. Did you go to Clemson with every intent to come back and be a part of the family business, or did you consider doing something else?
No. Again, it was like Dad was a general. He told me exactly what to do in the school. He put me in mechanical engineering for 2.5 years, and then moved me over to food science, the balance to go on and get out. And both of them were good studies for me to have with the job that I was inclined to do.
And Marion, what years were that? I mean, you went to Clemson when?
I went to Clemson in 1966.
So that would have been the cannery was founded in 1954.
Right.
So you're fairly new at canning, but he had clarity of what he wanted his boys to go off and do and come back prepared for. Henry, did you leave to go off to school?
Yes, I went to Clemson in 64, finished in 68, in the same path. But obviously, I was led in the direction of agronomy, which is a study of the soil and more of an agri-based study. So I studied growing crops and how do you grow them successfully.
And your father had a hand in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I got to ask you this now. Did either of you go off to Clemson, and as you're off to Clemson or in your time away from Effingham, did you think about, I don't know if I want to go back or not? I mean, there's some of these other things out here that I find interesting. Any curiosity at all about doing something else?
There was a little curiosity, but there was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to return home and get involved in the canning business. It was my passion. Frankly, all of my life, and it still is. I still love what I do. It's work, but it's also an awful lot of fun.
And Henry, same for you.
Absolutely.
Never a doubt.
No, there was never a doubt what I was going to do. And it, as man says, it's our passion, and it's something that we enjoy today, doing the same thing. And if we had to do it all over again, we wouldn't have made any changes.
Okay, the cannery is founded in 1954.
Right.
You guys get back from Clemson, late 60s.
Right.
I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah. What is life at the cannery like 14 years or 15 years after its founding, when both of you come back established in certain fields of expertise that are very beneficial to the business? Did the business take off? Did it struggle? I mean, did you guys feel like you really added a lot of value to it?
Well, when I got back, it was a hand operation. I mean, we had probably 60 people total, canning only 3 months out of the year. We did not have a forklift at that time. I remember when we got the forklift, we've got 180 forklifts today. Tomatoes were peeled by hand. So much was done by hand. Today it's so automated. It was a lot of hard work, and it still is. But it has changed dramatically. It has changed.
And Henry, to Marion's point, I mean, agriculture is seasonal.
Right.
So if you've got 3 months of just steady going as hard as you can go, was tobacco and cotton still a part of the portfolio?
It stayed a major part of the portfolio and carried the cannery up until probably the early 80s. But the cannery, the tobacco, there was still money in tobacco. I mean,
you couldn't afford not to grow it.
You had to stay in it, but the pressure on the harmful aspects of tobacco started kicking in, and less people were using the tobacco products. And not going into a lot of detail how tobacco was an allotted crop. So there's just a certain amount of tobacco could be grown. And it did it as it used to be acres, and it came into being pounds. So many pounds could be used. So you allotted so many pounds. And then people were getting out of tobacco, so in order to get those pounds and keep your pounds up to a good margin crop, and the farm was set for X number of pounds to grow and grow efficiently. And to do that, you had to start acquiring tobacco allotments, and that was expensive. And it worked, but prices started getting a little more competitive, what you got for your product, and the volume was going to go down. It just was going down, that you just couldn't grow it on the scale you needed to grow it on and make what you needed to make.
So while this is happening, are all three of you, the two of you and your dad, are y'all thinking about ways to grow the footprint of the cannery to make it a more than 3 month a year operation?
Yeah, we were working in that direction fairly early. I mean, when we graduated and came back home, we started shortly after that, we bought another company and grew us. We were expanding what we were doing then. So we were moving. We were just selling really in South Carolina and out of the Charlotte area in North Carolina. And no, we were all in and had full intent of growing the company.
Okay, I got to ask this. I worked with my brother and dad. There was a point in time when my dad began stepping away. He never retired. He died before he retired, but he began stepping away. Do you remember a point in time in the early days that your father began kind of drawing back a little bit and allowing you guys to make more of the important fundamental decisions, or was he always there in the middle of whatever needed to be done?
He was there, but he died early.
When did your dad die?
In 76.
Okay.
And he developed cancer, and he fought that for a long time. And he would step back for the last 3 or 4 years. Both Henry and I were back home by then. But we still answered to Dad. I mean, he was still the boss.
To the last day?
Well, without a doubt.
I can relate to that.
He was a good dad. We were very fortunate to have a good mom and dad.
Well, and your mom lived a long time.
Yeah. She was 102 and was sharp all the way up to the end.
And died recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we decide at some point in time, I got to believe that tobacco and cotton isn't the way to go. We're going. What needed to happen to make the cannery more than 3 months a year? I mean, did you have to go to farmers and see if they grow off-season product? I mean, walk us through how it went from being a 3-month-a-year operation to a full year behemoth of a machine that it is now.
Well, what happened was acquisitions. What happened was, we were growing local crops, corn, tomatoes, and okra, and string beans, and peanuts that were harvested right here. And then as we bought a greens canning company, we got into greens, and within a short time we had tripled that business. Well, greens took us into the fall business, and then we started getting the volume got more than what we could grow right here, so we started getting crops out of Georgia and expand them on into North Carolina. And that extended us on. Then we got into sweet potatoes, and that took us all through the fall. Spinach takes us all through the winter months, and then we get right back into the spring months, and starting with squash and string beans. It's early in April now. String beans, first load of string beans will start literally tomorrow, which is April the 4th, and we're canning today. So it's a wide variety of crops that we can.
But once again, it's almost like diversity is the word again.
Yes.
We diversified from tobacco and cotton, and once we got the cannery running, we had to diversify to get year-round product.
Right.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Henry, how, and I'll ask both of you this, when your dad passes away, does your mom take an active role at all in the business, or does she trust the two boys to do what needs to be done with the cannery?
She would. She really didn't take an active role as far as the day-to-day decisions were made, but she knew exactly what was going on, and through her lifetime, I would walk through the plant. Man would walk through the plant, and we would say something to one of the employees that had been there a while, and they wasn't paying attention to us. They'd say, "Your mom hired us." So that's, and I want a raise, so she'd go to see my mother. But but she didn't take an active role in it. But absolutely, we informed her daily and weekly on what was going on.
I know when my father passed away, I thought I was ready. My brother and I, we thought we were ready to run the business, but there's a difference in thinking you're ready, and all of a sudden, it's your baby.
Yeah.
The man that's been in the corner office all this time is not there any longer. Your father had cancer, so I would imagine there was a period of time you had to prepare for life after Dad. When Dad passed away, did the responsibility of carrying on that family name, did it become different, or did you guys know you were ready for it?
We were pretty well prepared. He had prepared us for it. We saw it coming, and he was right there. No, we were pretty well prepared, even though we made our world of mistakes back then, looking back at it. But I guess that is a major part of learning, is working through your mistakes. And we still make those mistakes.
Henry, what would your father say today? We don't know if he's looking down or not. I mean, I'd like to believe they do, and they express a sense of pride. What would your dad say? How many employees now? I mean, you talked about 50 or 60 employees back then. How many employees today?
About 12.
How many square feet under roof? I mean, it's
almost 2 million.
Okay,
It's
2 million
2
under
million
roof,
square feet. That's
12,
over
1,300 employees.
Yeah.
What would Daddy say today if he had 5 minutes of his time? You ever think of that?
Yeah. He wouldn't believe it, and as man said in our earlier conversations, it's hard for us to believe it too, from where we came from. It was a struggle. We didn't realize it was, particularly because you just grew up working like that. So getting up early in the morning, working all day and all night was just a normal way of life. But he wouldn't believe it. And again, we have a hard time from time to time walking through that cannery or walking through a grocery store or going to a restaurant and eat. Doesn't matter where in this country you go, you can walk through a grocery store and see 40 or 55 items.
And if I find somebody with one that isn't yours in a buggy, I take that one out and put one of yours in.
Yeah. Somebody asked me several times a year. They'll say, "Gosh, your dad would just
that
be
knew
really,
your father."
that he would really be amazed." Like Henry said, I'm amazed. I will walk through the plant because I remember 50 years ago when we were canning, and we will can as much this morning that we did all year back when we graduated from school. So, I mean, it has changed. It hadn't been overnight. So it's been gradual. But Henry and I remember it back in the day when it was a different story.
You talked about the struggle, Henry. As a family business, you're accountable for the bottom line. Yeah. If there's money in the bank, it's yours. If there ain't, it's your problem. I mean, and I would imagine through the years, you guys have dealt with expansion's expensive, and sometimes it doesn't go as planned. But isn't there some beauty in the struggle? I mean, isn't there? I mean, as weird as it sounds, isn't there a little beauty in the nervousness that goes along with running that business?
Yeah, you sleep a lot better at night. For
sure. when things are settled. I want to go. We talked about Daddy. I want to go back and talk about Mama. Mama didn't have a real active role in the business. What's Mama like? What was Mama? I mean, she lived to be 102 years old, right?
Yeah.
What was Mama like while you guys were growing that business? Did Mom check in? Did Mom do her thing? I've been told by people who knew I'm doing this podcast that you guys never get tired of talking about your mama.
Yeah.
So tell me about Mama.
She was a grand old lady. She really was. She was a patriarch of the family. She had a good heart. She was strict, but she was also soft. She was very supportive of us, and she wanted to know what was going on. She was very. Henry's dead right. She wasn't involved. But on another side of it, I would say she is very involved, and she was as happy about the organization as anybody was. She was an only child, but a real good mother.
And Henry, proud of y'all. Had to be enormously proud of the success that you guys had in business.
She was. She was very proud, and she's a smart lady. I mean, she really was. Not that. She played bridge, played the crossword puzzles. She kept her mind extremely active, and I wish I kept mine quite as active as she did. She loved flowers, particularly wildflowers, and she could talk to anybody. Didn't matter who they were, where they were from, what socioeconomic levels they're on. She made you feel real comfortable with her, and a good business lady. Her mother was a good business lady.
I've talked about this on the radio, and you guys are kind enough to listen every now and then, but I've talked about rural America and my concern that it's not the same. When you grew up in rural America even in my day, I mean, you guys are older than I am, but there was opportunity there. I mean, there were chances to make a living. I mean, farming was profitable. You talked about tobacco, and there were a lot of other textile mills and manufacturing plants. I mean, you've seen an enormous change in rural America. Does it make you proud to know that you're providing 1,300 jobs, not in New York, not in Los Angeles, not in Silicon Valley, but in rural South Carolina?
Well, I don't know if proud is the right word that I would use, but I am glad to be involved in it. It's a good company. Like Henry says, you can go across it. I was in Fairbanks, Alaska a year or so ago and saw our product up there. But there is a world of people. That 1,200 people, 1,400 people, that's a number. But I promise you, there are some good people down there. And there is no conceivable way that thing was built by us two. It was built by a team. I'm just glad, really am. It sounds a little corny. I'm just glad to be a part of that team. I really am. It's been a lot put into it. I would say this. Henry and I grew up together in the same bedroom in the house. We lived next door to each other.
Still do.
Still do. Our offices have always been next door to each other. But Henry and I never talked. I would go into his office and close the door, or he would come into mine and close the door, and we could never get 15 minutes together. We were very involved in running the company. So what we started some 25, 30 years ago is every Monday night, we would go out for supper. We picked Monday night because there were not many people out. And we would go out for supper. And when I picked him up at 6 or 6:30, it was nothing but business. It was not like, well, hi, I live with Mama. We lived together for 35 years. It was not, how's Mama doing? Or you've got a wedding this weekend, can I help you? For that supper, that Monday night, was all business. We went out night before last, this Monday night. We still do it. And that has been a huge part to me of keeping the company, having the time to discuss what we needed to talk about. It was more or less our little two-man board meeting that was, to me, is one of the 5 key points in doing what we're doing.
So how many conversations have you guys had that doesn't include McCall Farms? Probably not many.
Well, when man says our offices are next door, we don't talk, it's because somebody's interrupted us.
Yeah.
You're busy.
Yeah. I mean, it's
very
a phone
involved
call.
in the company. Very involved.
So the only
To
way
this
to
day.
get away, the only way to get away is to go to a restaurant or someplace. Hopefully nobody knows you or bothers you, and get in a corner booth. Nobody, they can't hear what you're talking about, and that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But how many times have we talked without McCall Farms? Well, we might start it about a wedding, but it never stops with the wedding. It'll be something to do with the company.
And people that have never been a part of family business don't understand that. My brother and I would drive to Florence and we'd talk about the ball game for 5 minutes, but eventually we'd get to that business, and it would be so consuming.
Right.
And we'd always say to one another, well, the ball game don't pay the bills. You know what I mean? We got this obligation,
Well, that's the same way.
and it morphs into this business conversation. Okay, we've talked about Daddy, we talked about Mama. It's still a family business.
Right.
I mean, you are the elder statesman at McCall Farms today. I want to get to your roles today and how actively and are you taking a long weekend every now and then. But let's go through the family members, Marion, that you have involved in the business and how excited you are to have them a part of what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I've got, of course, Henry and I are 2 of the 5 children. And Henry and I own the company, and, so there were 5 of us children in there. I've got 3 daughters, and 2 of them are involved in the company. One is living, the 3rd daughter is in Greenville. And then my youngest daughter Gray Swink Hunter married a Thomas Hunter here, in a local fella.
Good buddy of mine.
Yes, a very good, yeah. And Thomas has joined the company about 6 years ago, and he is now in top leadership of the company, very, very vital part of the company.
Marion, does it excite you to impart your wisdom to your kids? I mean, that's got to be gratifying to know that your dad started something, you two were vital in its prosperity or prospering and growing, and now you provided an opportunity, not just financially. I'm not talking about money. I mean, that's part of it. Yeah. We all know that. But it's a way of life. I mean, it's an investment and a commitment in a family name and a family business. I mean, surely that you swell with pride when you think of that.
Well, I am glad that they're down there. If they were not down there, I don't know what I would do with the company. But I am real glad that they're down there. Can I tell you, they are doing a great job. Henry's got 2 children down there. I've got 2 children down there. And they are taking the company, will take the company to a whole nother level.
Henry, when I decided to try to get you guys to come on the podcast, Woody. Mm-hmm. And I said, Woody, I want to get your daddy and Marion to come on the podcast. He said, well, let me talk to Daddy. So, I mean, I know Woody real well. I know Thomas real well. How excited are you to have your family members in the business?
Well, it's most rewarding. I'll tell you a quick story. At our semi-annually, we have a appreciation day to recognize people who've been there 5 years. Every 5 years. So you could have been there 20 years, but you've been recognized during that time. So I had I was asked I don't usually go to those, but I was asked to go back, I think it was in January actually. And so I was asked to go to that, and I didn't know it at the time, but McCall and Woody were getting recognized for being there for, say, 25 years. So I told them a story, and it kind of falls back 50 years earlier when Marion and I came. I said, my son, McCall, who's the oldest, when he graduated from Clemson in June, he was expecting to have the summer off, go back to work at the company in September. So I told him Sunday night, he graduated on Friday, Sunday night, I said, McCall, you're going to start work tomorrow, which is Monday, and you're going to be on the night shift. So we put him on the night shift his first week after graduation, stayed on there for 3 years. Going to work at 6, getting off at 2, which, of course, kept him out of trouble.
And Daddy owns the company.
So that worked fine. And then Woody graduates about 2 years later, and Woody was going to do the same thing. He graduated on Friday. He was going to take the summer off. No, Woody, you could go with me to Jacksonville, Florida. We call it on Winn-Dixie Monday, and you go down there and make your first call. So I get him down there. We're going down the interstate, and I was driving. And I said, Woody, I want you to figure how you do a margin, a markup and a margin. Now, this guy has been to school for 12 years, been to college for 4. And I said, Woody, he couldn't figure the margin. I said, I spent all this money, and you can't do a margin, the profitability on an item going to a customer we getting ready to go. So I taught him how to do it going down and back. He figured out how to do it. But he started that Monday after college. So man and I had about the same kind of path of going to work.
Well, you talked about your customers. I mean, your customers would be grocery stores. I mean, by and large, anybody that sells groceries. How do you convince the grocery store? I mean, I got to believe that's a competitive world. I mean, I got to believe that is a hyper-competitive world. So how do you stay ahead? I mean, how do you make sure, Marion and Henry, that you're staying competitive in that marketplace?
Well, we talk about, of course, quality, price, and service, and that is key, but also personal relationships. And we like to know the customer and the consumer. And it's just you have to sell quality because you can't fool that consumer time and time again.
And the grocery store, I mean, I can't think of a more competitive marketplace than a grocery store. I mean, when I walk in a grocery store, they're fighting for every decision that you make, whether it's canned goods or steak or chicken or whatever. I got to believe, and I don't know this, and I may be getting out of my lane here, but I got to believe that because the IGA is right down the road, that would have been one of the first folks you went to call on, Henry and Hayward and that crowd. Tell us as much or as little as you'd like, but what has that relationship been like over the years? Because it's two big companies where you wouldn't expect to find real big companies. Well, what has been the essence of that relationship, Marion and Henry?
It has been a pleasure knowing that company. Those fellows are just like us. Hayward and Henry are family people that were very involved in the company. Were not raised up outside of the company. They were all in. I've got a huge respect for them.
Henry?
They, just to tell you how they are, we, after my father died, and we were just out of school. We'd been out of school 2 years, just knew really and truly not a whole lot about the industry. And Henry he had just started working with the company, asked me to come down, and I met with Henry and his dad, Johnson. And then Mr. King comes in, Hayward's dad comes in, and he says, "Henry, what's the largest order y'all ever had?" I said, "Well, truck and a half." And he says, I'm going to put an order for 10 trucks, which is unbelievable. But that's just the kind of people they were.
They were the first to let you into grocery stores?
No. We were in them. But to really help us, they knew we were young to totally run a dog-eat-dog business, meeting tough people. Now, Henry and
because you bumped heads with corporate America.
Oh yeah.
I mean, once y'all got to a point where you're really a competitor. I mean, you're bumping heads with Del Monte and some of these corporate titans.
But those W. Flowers folks, there's no words to describe how honorable they are.
But to your point, they were our first in the group of 5 or 6. I mean, we sold them product from day one. They supported us. From the first day we got in the business, they were on board. What
is it like transitioning from a small mom and pop business into a company that does compete with and wins? I mean, you guys have a good market share. I know it. What has that been like? I mean, has it been nervous at times and excitement at other times? Because once again, when you're canning 3 months a year with 50 or 60 employees, next thing you know, you can in 12 months, you get with 12 or 1,300. I got to believe you're fighting for shelf space with some of the. I mean, you are one of the big boys now. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You are one of the biggest canneries in America. How many servings a day? You guys told me one time. How many servings are shipped out of that place every single day?
We'll can several million cans a day. Every
that's
can
crazy.
Is 5, 6, 7 servings a day. I mean,
we'll do about 4 million servings a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah,
that's
I
amazing.
would say at least 5 servings, 5 million.
And I can look at you. Really are kind of flabbergasted by that.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there every day. You see it, you build it, you're proud of it, but you still are a little bit like, wow, we do that. I mean, when you say it.
We are as flabbergasted.
Let's go to something that I got to believe is so essential to your success, and that is dependable, honest farmers. I mean, I read your website. I knew this because I've talked to Woody over the years. You guys depend on farmers. They depend on you.
Right.
Speak to that relationship that you have cultivated over the years with local farmers.
I would say that we'll interview a farmer now, and we were talking about the Kings and the Johnsons earlier. That they are abnormally to the industry, but they would be the type people we like to do business with, and we would approach a farmer, and we would just meet them and size them up as far as their.
What do you mean size them up? I know what you mean, but I want to
size them up, just see how devoted they were to the business. And you can tell a lot if they're devoted to that business, that they've got family in it, another generation coming up. And just how you can look at the farm and you can ride and look at the field and tell what kind of farmers they can if you know what you're doing. But we would size them up as much of their willingness to work and passing the farming operation to the next generation. So I could safely say, and I don't know who they are, but I don't know of any farmer that's not multi-generational that we're doing business with. I know we must have some because we're dealing in about 18 to 20 states, and I don't know them all. But almost all of our major key suppliers are multi-generational. And you get a multi-generation that gets along, you got a partner for life. And that is critical.
Marion, I would imagine there has to be contracts now. I mean, the business is too big. But does the handshake still matter, to Henry's point? I mean, I understand there are contracts and legalities, and because business is business. Yeah. But he talked about the handshake. That still matters in your business.
Without a doubt. You know, these people, these farmers that we got, they are independent entrepreneurs like you and us. They're in it. You know, it's still corporate America, but it is still the honor of who you're doing business with. That is really what counts. I mean, that's who we deal with.
Do you believe that's what sets you apart from corporate America? That the shareholder, stockholder, quarterly report, competitors of yours, that you can still depend on that relationship?
You know, we say on kind of a little billboard, a slogan we have is family-owned, what is it? Family-owned, family-grown, family-owned and U.S. grown.
Yeah.
Wow. And that it is family-owned both here in Effingham and the family farm, and it's all U.S. grown product. And yes, we definitely have that relationship.
And I know we're talking about our family, but truly we work tirelessly to be sure that all our employees feel part of the family. We try to do that.
When I asked, and I went down and met with Henry, and I asked him to consider sponsoring, and I've told Henry, and I've told Woody, and I think I've told Thomas this. I know I don't have the ability to move the meter on your market share. I mean, there's nothing we're going to talk about here that's going to convince people to buy Margaret Holmes and not some other brand. But you guys told me something one day that I've never forgotten. Ken, the people that work at our business matter to us as much as the family that works at our business, and I want them to be proud. Yeah. And I want them to think about our business in a positive light. And if you help us do that, then we're all. That's important to you guys. That connection you have with your workforce,
and it's honest. I mean, we are all in this thing together.
And Ken, I think you would be amazed at how that passes to our customer, to the Walmart buyer, to the Publix buyer, to the Harris-Teeter buyer, or the Food Line buyer. We display that. We emphasize that. When we go on we call them a call to a visit. We talk a little bit about our product, but we talk about this stuff that makes the wheels turn. And they realize who we are, and that helps.
It's still relationships.
Oh, yeah.
It's still all about.
It's still, and it's relationships, but I don't think it relationships to the degree with other companies as it is with ours.
Okay, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. When I was lieutenant governor, a senator would stand up and I'd say, for what purpose does a senator from Florence rise? Point of personal privilege. I want to know who came up with Peanut Patch. I want to know the story, because I get Southern canned vegetables. I mean, I understand that. You guys do it better than anybody in the world. But who came up with the thought of canning peanuts, put them in convenience stores, sell them at ball games?
Oh, that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing side of that.
Yeah.
Who came up with that idea, and why did the two of you believe it was a good idea?
It was the next generation. It was really Woody and McCall that came up with that. Henry and I are all about canning. Now, we talk about canning. We've got a frozen division that we freeze everything we can. But Woody and McCall came up with that concept of putting boiled peanuts in convenience stores. And did not see it. But
what was your initial reaction, Marion?
My fellows, we got to stay in the canning plant. I mean, that's where the work
How did I
is done.
suspect that?
But then they brought in, and right along with them was Camp Blanton, that was an old friend of the family and grew up together and went to Clemson together. And Camp took that on, and those three have made quite a business out of that. I mean, those things are sold from Texas to all through Virginia and all. I mean,
there are 25,000 convenience stores.
Did you see it coming, Henry? Were you as reluctant as Marion was?
I don't know that either one of us were truly reluctant because it wasn't a bunch of money, and we were just canning a few. I mean, so we'd can 3 or 4 days worth of gallon cans. It wasn't because something was going to break the bank, but it started growing to the point that it would have.
And it needed some investment, right? You got to put some money behind it.
We poured the money in it
to make it go. Again, Camp drew that. I mean, that's some of Camp Blanton's work back there.
But that is their project. That next generation, that was 100%. And when I say 100%, we supported them. But that was 100% of the next generation.
So do you like it when the next generation brings you ideas?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because if you're not moving forward, you're standing still, right?
We count on them to bring us ideas. And they have brought us a number of other ideas.
Always thinking ahead.
They are.
Always trying to figure out, okay, let's do this. You guys have poured your life into that business, both of you, in different and multitudes of ways. You learned from your father. Your mama kind of watched over your shoulder all those years. You're how old, Marion?
77.
You're how old, Henry?
79.
What does life look at now? I mean, is it still I'm there, I'm all in, or is it? I mean, when my father passed away, he was harder to find on Fridays. I mean, he'd worked all his life and built a business, but on Fridays he got a little bit harder to find. Is it time for Henry and Marion to think like that a little bit?
Well, when I found out we had to come up here at 4 o'clock today, I said, why can't we do it at 6:30 or 7 o'clock? We're still putting in the hours down there.
I pulled you away from the business.
You certainly did. We have stepped away and let these next three.
What does that mean, Marion? We stepped away. I know you better. I mean, there's no way you'll ever completely step away.
Right. But I have got to back out to let this next generation get in and do what's got to be done. I am glad I am where I am today. I wouldn't go back when I was 45 or their age or 25 or any other. Life is great at this point. But I really do miss the everyday challenge. I enjoy the battles as much as I did the positives.
Henry, I've heard people get to the end of a career and they say they looked forward until people didn't ask them as many questions, didn't call them as much. I got a dear friend, and he's your dear friend, and everybody that needed political advice went to him. And he's gotten older, and people don't go to him as often. And he said, I thought I would enjoy people not coming to me, but I actually miss it. That's kind of what Marion's saying. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, but I still get a lot of reports, and I enjoy reading reports. Marion likes mechanical. I like to read reports, monthly statements. I'll do that at night. I just read annual reports from. This is one of my favorite times of the year because all the few stocks that I have, they send out annual reports, and I'll get them and read them at night. So I still stay in tune to what the company is doing financially, and but I don't. I'm not like man says day to day, but I go to the office every day.
Last question, and we've been at it about an hour. Last question. What does Marion like to do outside of McCall Farms? What's something you really enjoy? What's something that gets you excited? What's something that you look forward to?
I enjoy a lot of activities. I'm not really good in any special one, but I should still water ski.
Do you really?
I still get up on a slalom. Deep water start. They have a tennis match. I play singles every week. I enjoy a little bit of golf, enjoy hunting and fishing. Again, I'm not good at anything. Grandchildren are something special. You know, I do have more time with the family now than I did back then, and that is probably something that I missed, putting all the time in at work and not that much with the family. But I do enjoy a lot of personal time off now.
Henry?
Well, I would say from a recreational sports thing, it would be quail hunting. Now, I quail hunt during the season at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So that part of it is I enjoy entertaining. There's nothing more enjoyable for me to do to have a dinner party and have a Jeffersonian dinner party to ask a few questions around to get the conversation. That would be something I enjoy. My wife fusses at me because she says I'll look for things to do from a dinner party standpoint. I like that. And I'm like, man, I do spend a lot of time with grandchildren. Went to Globetrotters last night with grandchildren, and today I do something my dad used to do. I take them on the farm and I drop them off. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give you 20 minutes to meet at this point. And I drop them off where they've never been before. They just go through the woods looking for the way out. And so I spend time with grandchildren.
It's not a question as much as a comment, but you guys have lived the American dream. I mean, you know that. I mean, you've earned it. I mean, nobody gave you anything, but you've lived the American dream. And I think it's important that people know you don't wake up one day with 1,300 employees. You don't wake up one day with a big share of the market. You don't nobody gives you anything in that world. And I think it's important that people who don't run businesses understand how complicated it is to run a business, especially one where you got that family dynamic, you know, and you got kids and grandkids one day. And I guess my last question is this. We talked about if your Father in heaven is able to look down and express a degree of pride, what one of these days do you hope to look down from heaven and see McCall Farms as? I mean, it was your dad's baby. It became your baby. You guys have obviously excelled and succeeded in ways that most people can't imagine. What do you hope this next generation you talk about do with McCall Farms?
I would hope that I could look down at the family. It's still family-owned, family-run, family-managed, and putting out a great product, selling coast to coast, all the major retailers and wholesalers, and just a well-respected, well-known company with good, wholesome family managing it.
Marion?
I would say the same thing, and Henry will go along with this too. I hope that the next generation will get along as good together as Henry and I have. We will disagree, but we will pull in the same direction every day with everything we've got. And I would say that I'm not hesitant to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would say that, you know, we have worked hard. We've got a good education. We were well brought up with two good parents. We also had some help from where our dad is now. There is no doubt that that divine help was a major part of the success of our company, if it's successful. It wasn't just us. Believe you me, it was not just us.
You know, and I've noticed as people, and I admire you guys, and I mean this sincerely, people like you make me better. I'm to the point in my life, Henry and Mary, I'm 60, and I'll have a young buck come up to me one day and have a problem, and he'll ask me about what he should do. The only reason I'm able to give him advice is because I've listened to people like you. And I mean that, and it's kind of our obligation to future generations. The mistakes we've made, the lessons we've learned, let's help those young people as they make those mistakes and learn those lessons. And as you get older, Marion, to your point, you do tend to look above. And you do tend to say, hey, I didn't do this with just Henry. We had God in heaven, right. Kind of guiding us. And I think honoring him and counting your blessings according to him is something we all need to do.
We do not need to forget that or overlook that or think it's us. And talking about listening to people, I enjoy listening to you on the radio.
Oh, my Lord.
You just keep that up.
I wouldn't undersell yourself. You
guys have been very kind to us over the years. I appreciate it. I was excited to do this because I'm not writing you off. I mean, I hope you guys live another 25 or 30 years.
Yeah, sure.
But I just think it's important that our community, and I'm looking at the camera, knows the stories of these people that have made this community so successful. 1,300 people are able to provide for their family because they got a job. And that makes a community go. That makes an economy go. And I don't think we should ever lose sight of how important self-made and family-run businesses are. We read media about these huge monstrosities of companies, Apple and Intel and Google. I still believe the lifeblood, heart, and soul of our economy are men like you and the businesses that you guys have built. And I thank you, and I mean that sincerely. I thank you for your support of this podcast, and I thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken. It was an honor being with you.
Well, and I want to thank our sponsors again, McCall Farms, these two guys, Francis Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky Finn's, Victor's, MPD Electric Co-op, Pepsi of Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. We're gaining a little traction. Keep us on top of the scoreboard as you subscribe and like some of these videos and audios. We're gonna get to where we're trying to be. It's just gonna take a little while. I hope it doesn't take as long as McCall Farms has been around, but it's gonna take us a little while to make our presence known. But thank you very, very much.